She thought the worst night of her life was already behind her, but the worst night hadn't come yet. 42 floors above Chicago, a man stood alone before a floor-to-ceiling window, holding a wedding invitation like it might burn him. Min Jae Kwon had built an empire in a city that never forgave weakness, but this small ivory card had made something tighten behind his ribs, not because he still loved her, because he knew exactly what this wedding meant. 3 blocks away on a bench in Millennium Park, a young black woman sat alone in the dark, coat thin, hands tucked beneath her arms, snow falling in slow, quiet spirals around her. She didn't know her last name. She didn't know her past. She didn't know that somewhere in this city a family had never stopped looking for her. 2 people. 2 worlds. No reason to ever meet. But tonight, Chicago had other plans. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss a single part of this story. Drop your location and local time in the comments right now. I want to know where in the world you're watching from. And if you think you already know where this is going, keep watching. Because you don't. The city of Chicago never truly slept. It hummed, it pressed, it watched, and no one understood that better than Min Jae Kwon. His penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor of a glass tower in the Gold Coast, a neighborhood where old money and new power lived side by side and pretended not to notice each other. The interior was spare by design. No excess. No decoration that didn't serve a purpose. A single long desk faced the window, a glass of water untouched, a phone face down, and on the desk the invitation. Min Jae hadn't moved it since Daniel placed it there 2 hours ago. He stood with his hands in his pockets and studied it the way he studied everything, not with emotion, but with calculation. Seo Yeon Kang was getting married. He had known it would happen eventually. She was the only daughter of Chairman Kang Byung-soo, the man who ran Kang Capital, the single largest rival to Kwon Industries in the Midwest. Their relationship 3 years ago had been complicated from the start. She was sharp-polished, fluent in the language of power. When it ended, he hadn't allowed himself to grieve. He simply moved forward. That was what he did. He moved forward. But this wedding was not about Seo-yeon. Daniel had delivered the real information earlier that evening, his voice carefully neutral, the way it always was when the news was serious. At the reception, sir. Midnight. A private signing between Thomas Whitfield and the Kang legal team. The final transfer of Moore Industries' remaining assets, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolios, the subsidiary contracts. Everything Marcus Moore had built. Gone with the stroke of a pen into the hands of the people who destroyed him. Min Jae had said nothing for a long moment. Then, clear my schedule for the next 3 days. Marcus Moore had been the one man in Chicago's business world that Min Jae Kwon had genuinely respected. Not feared, not tolerated, respected. Marcus had built Moore Industries from nothing, a black entrepreneur in a city whose financial circles had spent decades making clear he wasn't welcome. He had broken through anyway with patience and precision and an integrity that Min Jae had found almost unreasonably rare. They had partnered on 2 major developments, shaken hands across a table, and both meant it. And then 3 years ago, Marcus Moore had died in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday night. His daughter had disappeared. His company had collapsed slowly, then all at once into the waiting hands of Kang Capital. Min Jae had looked into it. He had found nothing conclusive. And in the absence of proof, he had done the one thing that cost him most. He had moved on. But the weight of it had never fully left. Some debts stayed on the books no matter how many years passed. He picked up his coat. He needed air. Millennium Park at midnight in December was not a place most people chose to be. The paths were empty, dusted with snow that crunched softly beneath Min Jae's shoes. He walked without destination, hands in his pockets, breath visible in the cold. No security. No Daniel. Just the city pressing in on all sides and his own thoughts, which were louder than he preferred. He almost didn't see her. She was sitting on a bench near the eastern edge of the park, partially hidden by the shadow of a bare oak tree. Her coat was the kind that had once been functional and was now just barely holding together dark green broken zipper held closed by her arms wrapped tight around herself. Her hair was loose natural, her face turned down. Min Jae slowed. He was not a man who stopped for strangers, but something about her stillness made him pause. Not pity, he had learned to distrust pity as a motive. It was something else. She wasn't hunched in defeat. She was sitting the way someone sits when they are waiting for something they cannot name. He stepped closer. Her eyes lifted immediately, sharp alert, already assessing him in under a second, with a wariness that told him she had learned the hard way that strangers in the dark were rarely good news. "I'm not in any trouble," she said, before he could speak. Her voice was quiet but clear. "You don't need to call anyone." "I wasn't going to," he said. He took off his coat and set it on the far end of the bench. Not handed it, set it down. Then he sat on the opposite end and looked out toward the arch. Silence. She didn't touch the coat for nearly a full minute. Then without a word, she pulled it across her lap. "Min-jae," he said, still looking forward. "Layla," she replied. A pause. "I think." He turned slightly. "You think?" She didn't look embarrassed, just tired. "I woke up in an alley about 3 years ago. No ID, no phone. Only a piece of paper in my pocket with that name on it." She paused. "So, Layla? Probably." In his world, people lied constantly, elaborately, with entire architectures of false detail. What she had just said was too sparse, too flat to be a fabrication. It had the weight of something simply true. "I need someone to accompany me to a wedding," he said. 3 days from now, one evening. I'll arrange everything, clothing, accommodation until then." He paused. "You would be doing me a professional courtesy." Layla turned to look at him fully for the first time. Her expression moved through several calculations quickly: threat, assessment, motive, risk. "You don't know me," she said. "No, I don't know me." "I know." He met her gaze. "That's not what I'm asking you for." She looked at him for a long moment. The wind moved through the bare branches above them. "One evening," she said finally. "One evening." She pulled his coat slightly tighter around her shoulders. "Okay." Min-jae nodded once. He didn't smile. But something in his posture settled the faint shift of a man who had just made a decision he didn't fully understand yet. Neither of them spoke again for a while, and in the silence, neither of them noticed that across the park, the glass tower of Moore Industries, dark and empty for 3 years, caught the pale reflection of the falling snow. The apartment was on the 14th floor of a building in River North. It wasn't extravagant, but it was warm and clean, and the windows looked out over the city in a way that made the world feel manageable. Min-jae had arranged it through Daniel with a single phone call the night before. Layla had said nothing when they arrived, just walked through the rooms, slowly touching nothing, as though she was memorizing the dimensions of a space she wasn't sure she was allowed to occupy. In the kitchen, she paused beside the marble countertop. Her fingers rested on its edge, not gripping, just resting, and for a moment her eyes went somewhere distant. Then she pulled her hand back and said nothing. Min-jae noticed. He didn't comment. The next morning, Daniel arrived at 9 with a garment bag and a card for a boutique on Michigan Avenue. Min-jae was already there, standing near the window with a coffee he hadn't touched. Layla came out of the bedroom in the clothes she had arrived in, clean now, but worn. She looked at the garment bag, then at Min-jae. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "The event has a dress code," he replied. "Consider it a logistical requirement." She almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. The boutique was the kind of place that didn't display prices. Everything was arranged on sparse white racks beneath recessed lighting, and the staff moved with the quiet efficiency of people trained to make wealth feel effortless. When Layla stepped through the door beside Min-jae, she felt the shift in the room immediately, the brief pause, the recalibration behind polished eyes. One of the sales associates looked from her to Min-jae with an expression that was professionally neutral and personally doubtful. "We're looking for an evening gown," Min-jae said without looking at the associate. "For her. Please bring what's appropriate." The associate moved. Layla stood in the center of the floor and took it in the mirrored walls, the hushed atmosphere, the clothing that cost more than 3 months of the odd jobs she had pieced together over the past year. She felt the familiar pull of wrongness, the sense that she had walked into a room that belonged to someone else. But then something strange happened. As the associate began moving through the racks, Layla's eyes drifted to a particular dress near the back, a sleek black column gown, minimal structured with a deep neckline, and a fabric that caught the light without demanding it. She hadn't been directed toward it. She had simply seen it. "That one," she said quietly. The associate paused. Min-jae turned to look. "That one," Layla said again, more certain. She tried it on alone in the dressing room. When she stepped out, the associate's expression shifted first a small involuntary adjustment. Min-jae looked at her for a moment without speaking. "That's the one," he said. Layla looked at herself in the long mirror. The dress fit as though it had been constructed with her measurements in mind. She stood very straight. Her chin lifted slightly. Something in her posture changed, not performed, not practiced, simply remembered. She turned away from the mirror before the feeling could settle into anything she'd have to name. The salon was 3 blocks north on the 6th floor of a building that smelled of warm sandalwood and fresh flowers. Layla sat in the chair and watched in the mirror as the stylist worked through her hair with careful, practiced hands. It had been years since anyone had done this. She had forgotten what it felt like to be tended to the particular quality of attention that came from someone whose entire focus was on making you look like yourself, only more so. When the stylist finished and reached for a strand of pearls to drape across Layla's collarbone for effect, something happened. Layla went very still. The stylist paused. "Is this all right?" "Yes," Layla said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I've worn pearls before." She paused. "I don't know when, but I have." The stylist smiled and set them aside, but the words stayed in the air. From across the room, Min-jae had heard. He set down his phone. He said nothing, but behind his eyes something moved a thought that arrived without invitation and refused to leave quietly. When Layla finally looked at herself in the full mirror, hair soft and shaped makeup clean and precise, the black gown pulling everything together, she was silent for a long moment. Then her eyes filled, not dramatically, not with a sound. Just the slow, quiet welling of someone who had looked at a stranger's face in mirrors for 3 years and was suddenly inexplicably looking at her own. "Is this really me?" she asked, almost to herself. Min-jae stepped into her line of sight in the mirror. He looked at her reflection. "That's who you are," he said. "This is just the first time you've seen it recently." Layla pressed her lips together and looked away. They stopped at a small cafe on the walk back, a narrow place with fogged windows and the smell of dark roast and cinnamon. They sat across from each other at a corner table and ordered without much discussion. Outside, the snow had started again light and indifferent. Min-jae spoke first. "There was a man I worked with, years ago. He built something significant in this city, genuinely significant. He died because someone decided his success was inconvenient." He paused. "I've never fully resolved that." Layla watched him. "Is that why you're going to this wedding?" He looked at her, partly. She turned her coffee cup slowly in her hands. "I keep getting pieces," she said. "Not memories exactly. More like sensations. The smell of sandalwood in a big room. A man's voice low singing something I can't quite hear. A window. Lake Michigan right outside it." She paused. "And pearls. Someone who loved me wore pearls." Min-jae was quiet for a moment. The Marcus Moore he had known had lived in a lakefront estate on the North Shore. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Lake Michigan from every room. And Diana Moore, Marcus's wife, had worn pearls at every function Min-jae had ever seen her attend. He set his cup down carefully. "We should get back," he said. His voice was level. "Big day in 2 days." Layla nodded. She didn't notice that his jaw had tightened slightly, or that his eyes had gone somewhere very far away for just a moment before he pulled them back. But as they stepped back out into the cold and the snow fell around them, Min-jae Kwon turned one thought over and over in his mind, quiet and relentless as the snow itself. It couldn't be, could it? The Whitfield event space occupied the entire top floor of a hotel in Streeterville. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides. Chandeliers that caught the light and scattered it across the room in slow gold fragments. 200 guests in evening wear moving between circular tables draped in white linen and towering arrangements of white orchids. A string quartet played near the far wall. Champagne moved through the room on silver trays never running low. It was the kind of wedding that announced itself as a transaction. Beautiful, precise, built to impress people who already had everything. The elevator doors opened at 7:42 p.m., and Min Jae-kwon stepped out with Layla at his side. He wore black as he always did, no tie. The kind of understated that cost more than most people's monthly salary. He moved through the entrance with the ease of a man who had never in his life needed to prove he belonged anywhere. Layla walked beside him and did not look at the floor. She had made that decision in the car that whatever happened tonight, she would not look at the floor. Her dress was black and clean and fitted. Her hair was down soft around her face. Her spine was straight. She had been homeless and nameless for 3 years, and she had survived it by deciding every single morning that she was still a person. Tonight was no different. The room noticed them. It happened the way it always happened in spaces like this, not loudly, but completely. A pause in conversation here, a redirected gaze there, the particular silence that moves through a crowd when something unexpected has entered. Min Jae didn't acknowledge it. Neither did Layla. Daniel materialized at Min Jae's shoulder within 30 seconds, voice low. Kang legal team arrived 20 minutes ago. Whitfield's people are already positioned near the private dining room. Signing is still scheduled for midnight. He paused. She's seen you? Min Jae didn't ask who. Where? North end of the room. She hasn't moved. Seo-yeon Kang stood near a floral arrangement, the height of a person holding a glass of champagne she hadn't touched. She was extraordinary looking, that had never been the question. Sharp features, a white gown that had been designed specifically for her hair, pulled back into a structure that was more architecture than style. She was the kind of woman who had learned early that beauty was a resource and had invested it carefully ever since. She had seen Min Jae the moment the elevator opened. She had also seen the woman beside him. And in the space of 2 seconds beneath the smile she kept perfectly in place, something cold moved through her chest. She knew that face. She had spent 3 years believing that face no longer existed. She set her champagne down and moved toward them with the smooth, unhurried confidence of a woman walking toward something she had already decided she could control. Min Jae. Her voice was warm. Her eyes were not. I didn't expect you to come. Congratulations, he said. Nothing more. Seo-yeon's gaze moved to Layla, a full, slow assessment delivered with a smile that never wavered. And you've brought a guest. How lovely. She extended her hand. I'm Seo-yeon, the bride. Layla took her hand. Layla. Layla. Seo-yeon repeated the name as though tasting it. Just Layla. For now, Layla said. Something shifted behind Seo-yeon's eyes, fast controlled, gone in under a second. She smiled wider. Well, I hope you enjoy the evening. She looked back at Min Jae. Save me a moment later, for old times. She moved away. Layla watched her go. She recognized me, she said quietly. Min Jae didn't look at her. Why do you say that? Because she looked at me the way people look at something they're afraid of, Layla said. Not someone they've never seen before. Min Jae said nothing, but his hand moved barely briefly to the small of her back. A gesture so small it was almost not a gesture at all. Then it was gone. The evening moved in careful layers. Min Jae worked the room the way he always worked rooms, methodically, unhurried, extracting and planting information in the same breath. He spoke to 3 members of the Whitfield board. He spent 11 minutes with a federal judge he had known for years. He positioned himself near the private dining room twice without entering it. Layla stayed close. She had expected to feel like a prop in someone else's scene. Instead, she found herself genuinely present, watching, listening, noticing. There was something familiar about the rhythm of this kind of room, the way power arranged itself around tables, the language beneath the language. She didn't know why she understood it. She was standing near the east windows looking out at the city below when she heard her name. Not Layla, the other name. Elena? And then softer, Elena Moore. She turned. An older man stood 3 feet away, gray at his temples, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. His face was the color of a man who had just seen something he had stopped believing he would ever see. His eyes were bright and wet and completely certain. "I'm sorry," Layla said carefully. "I don't know that name." The man exhaled a long, unsteady breath. "You look exactly like your father," he said. His voice broke on the last word. "Exactly like Marcus." The name hit her like cold water. She didn't know why. She had heard it before Minjai had mentioned it at the cafe in the abstract without attachment. But hearing it now in this man's voice with that particular grief wrapped around every syllable, something happened in her chest. Something shifted deep and tectonic beneath 3 years of nothing. "My name is Layla," she said, but her voice was not as steady as it had been. "Your name is Elena Moore," he said gently. "And I have been looking for you for 3 years." The string quartet played on. Champagne moved across the room on silver trays. 200 people laughed and clinked glasses, and didn't notice that near the east windows, a young woman's entire world had just cracked open at the seams. Minjai appeared at her side. He looked at the man. Recognition moved across his face, brief, controlled. "Mr. Carter." Raymond Carter looked at Minjai, then back at Layla, then back at Minjai with an expression that asked a question he didn't yet have the words for. "Not here," Minjai said quietly. He looked at Layla. Her face was very still. Her hands were at her sides. At the north end of the room, Seoyeon stood watching. Her champagne glass was empty now. Her face was composed, but her eyes were moving fast, calculating, running through possibilities and exits and contingencies, the way they always did when something threatened to become uncontrollable. This was a problem. This was a very serious problem, and Seoyeon Kong had not survived this long by letting problems breathe. There was a private terrace off the east corridor, past the coat check, and a pair of heavy doors that most guests hadn't bothered to find. Minjai found it in under 2 minutes. The 3 of them stood in the cold Layla Minjai and Raymond Carter, with the city spread out below them, and the muffled sound of the string quartet bleeding through the glass. Carter spoke quickly, the way a man speaks when he has been rehearsing something for 3 years and finally has an audience. Marcus Moore, chairman and founder of Moore Industries. One of the most significant Black entrepreneurs in Chicago's modern history, died 3 years ago in a car accident on the night of November 14th on a rain-slicked stretch of highway outside the city. His daughter Elena, 25 at the time, returning from a charity event with him, had been thrown from the vehicle on impact. Emergency services had found Marcus. They had not found Elena. The family had searched. Carter had hired investigators. Diana Moore had refused to stop believing her daughter was alive. They had never stopped looking. Layla stood very still through all of it. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask questions. She just stood with her arms at her sides and let the words come, and with every sentence something moved inside her. Not memory exactly. Not yet. More like the feeling of a locked room whose walls had just begun to vibrate. "The accident," she said when Carter finished. "It wasn't an accident." Carter paused. "What makes you say that?" "Because I keep seeing it," she said quietly. "Not all of it, pieces. The rain. My father's voice telling me to hold on. And another car behind us before the impact. It didn't swerve. It didn't brake." She paused. "It was there on purpose." Carter and Minjai exchanged a look. "There were rumors," Carter said carefully. Marcus had been investigating internal financial irregularities, fraud potentially. Large sums being routed through Moore Industries' subsidiary accounts into offshore holdings. He had documentation. He had names. He stopped. He died before he could take it anywhere. Minjai's voice when it came was very controlled. The names. Were any of them connected to Kang Capital? Carter looked at him for a long moment. That was the direction the evidence was pointing, yes. The cold settled around them. Minjai turned and looked through the glass doors at the room beyond, at the white orchids and the chandeliers and the 200 people who had no idea what was being said on this terrace. Somewhere in that room, a legal team was preparing documents for a midnight signing. Somewhere in that room, Seoyeon Kang was managing her expression and calculating her next move. And somewhere in that room, 3 years of buried truth had just found the surface. It was Seoyeon who found Layla first. Min-jae had stepped back inside to locate Daniel. Carter had gone to retrieve a folder he had left with the coat check documents he had been carrying to every significant social event in Chicago for the past 18 months on the small, stubborn chance that someone who knew Elena might appear. Layla was alone on the terrace for less than 4 minutes. The door opened and Seoyeon stepped through it, and for a moment the two women simply looked at each other in the cold and the quiet. Then Seoyeon smiled. "I thought I might find you out here." "I'm sure you did," Layla said. The smile didn't waver. "I want to be honest with you. I think that's better given the circumstances." She moved to the railing, standing a careful distance away, looking out at the city. "I know who you are. I recognized you the moment you walked in. Elena Moore." She paused. "I thought you were dead." "I know," Layla said. "That was the point, wasn't it?" Seoyeon was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, something in her voice had shifted, still controlled but thinner. "Whatever Carter has told you, Min-jae is not someone you should trust. Your father trusted him. He was your father's partner, his confidant. And when Marcus came to him with what he had found the documentation, the names Min-jae did nothing. He looked the other way." She turned to face Layla. "Your father died because the people around him chose their interests over his life. Min-jae Kwon was one of those people." Layla looked at her. She let the words sit, let them press against her, felt the shape of them the way they were designed to land the specific wound they were aimed at. "That's a very clean story," Layla said finally. Seoyeon blinked. "I'm telling you the truth." "You're telling me something," Layla said. "I haven't decided yet if it's the same thing." The door opened behind them. Min-jae stepped through it and stopped reading the scene in under a second. Seoyeon's expression resettled itself into something gracious and wounded. "I was just introducing myself properly." She looked at Min-jae. "I hope you'll give her a chance to make her own judgments." She moved past him and back inside without another word. Layla turned to Min-jae. "Did you know my father was in danger?" she asked. Her voice was level. "When he came to you with what he found, did you know what was at risk?" Min-jae looked at her. "Yes." The word landed hard. "And you did nothing." "I looked into it," he said. "I found incomplete information. I made a judgment call that the threat wasn't immediate." He paused. "I was wrong." "A judgment call," she repeated. "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment. The city glittered below them. Somewhere inside, the quartet had shifted to something slower. "I need some air," she said, and she walked back inside without him. Min-jae stood alone on the terrace. He didn't go after her. He had never been a man who chased not people, not explanations, not forgiveness. But the particular weight of watching her walk away from him was different from anything he had felt in a long time. He pulled out his phone. "Daniel," he said when the call connected, "tell me you have something." Daniel's voice was calm. "I have everything, sir. Server logs from 3 years ago. Communication records between Seoyeon Kang and her father's security team, time-stamped 2 days before the accident. And a location ping pulled from your own phone's data without your knowledge. Someone accessed your device remotely." A pause. "The ping shows Mr. Moore's exact route that night. Sent from your number. You didn't send it." Min-jae closed his eyes. 1 second. 2. "Bring it to me," he said. "Now." Layla found a quiet corner near the bar and stood there alone. The room moved around her laughter, clinking glass, the low hum of 200 people performing ease at someone else's wedding. She watched it all and tried to organize what was happening inside her into something she could hold. Elna Moore. She had a name, a real one. A father who had called her his little star and died on a rain-soaked highway trying to protect her. A mother who had never stopped believing she was alive. An entire life waiting 3 years in the dark for her to come back to it. She pressed her fingers against the edge of the bar. Then she straightened, and she went to find Seoyeon. She found her near the bridal table. Layla waited, still visible, patient, until the guests thinned and Seoyeon turned and saw her. For a fraction of a second, Seoyeon's composure flickered. Then it was back. "Elena," she said, "are you all right?" "I want to ask you something directly," Layla said, "and I want a direct answer." Seoyeon tilted her head. "Of course. You knew what your family was running through Moore Industries. My father found it and started documenting it. And 2 days before November 14th, someone sent his route to a number traced to Min Jae-kwon." Layla held her gaze. "But it wasn't Min Jae who sent it. His phone was on the table at the North Shore dinner 3 weeks before the accident. You were the only other person there." Something moved behind Seoyeon's eyes. Not guilt, something more practical. The calculation of a woman assessing how much had been uncovered. "I loved your father like family," Seoyeon said, her voice precisely calibrated. "I would never." "The server logs exist," Layla said. "The communication records between you and your father's security team are time-stamped. By tomorrow morning, the people who need to see them will have seen them." Seoyeon went very still. "You don't know what you're walking into," she said. Her voice dropped. The warmth was gone. "Your father thought he could expose my family and walk away. You see how that ended." "Yes," Layla said. "I do." She held Seoyeon's gaze one long, unbroken moment. Then Min Jae was there. He stepped in beside Layla, not in front of her, not between them. Beside her. Hands in his pockets. Face completely calm. He looked at Seoyeon the way he looked at everything he had already decided the outcome of. For the first time all evening, Seoyeon had nothing to say. "The signing won't be happening tonight," Min Jae said. "Thomas Whitfield has already been informed. The documentation goes to the Financial Crimes Division Monday morning." He paused. "I'd suggest you spend the rest of your evening however you find most comforting." He turned slightly toward Layla. She was already moving beside him. They walked away together, and neither of them looked back. Raymond Carter was waiting near the exit with his coat on and a black folder under one arm. "Your mother is at the house on Elmwood," he said. "She doesn't know yet. Are you ready?" Layla looked at Min Jae. He gave her one small, deliberate nod. "I'm ready," she said. The house on Elmwood was a pale gray colonial set back behind 2 large oaks. The porch light was on. One warm window glowed on the ground floor. Carter knocked. Footsteps from inside, slow, unhurried. The footsteps of someone who had stopped expecting good news at the door. Then silence. A pause. And then it opened. Diana Moore was fine-boned and silver-haired, wearing a pearl necklace over a simple cardigan. She looked at Carter first. Then her eyes moved to Layla. She made a sound that existed below language entirely. The sound of 3 years of not giving up. Layla's throat closed. She knew this woman, not in the way of memory, not yet, but her body knew. The specific gravity of her presence, the pearls at her throat, the smell of the house behind her warm sandalwood old paper, something baked earlier in the day. She had grown up here. Diana Moore stepped forward and opened her arms. Layla walked into them without a word. The tears came. Then not the quiet kind from the salon mirror. These were different. 3 years of not knowing where she belonged, breaking open all at once on a porch in December in the arms of a woman who had never stopped setting a place for her at the table. "I missed you," her mother sobbed. "Not one day. Not one." "I don't remember everything yet," Layla whispered, "but I remember this. I remember you." Min Jae stood at the end of the porch steps. He didn't come up. He turned toward the street and let them have the moment entirely. Later, when they were all inside and the photographs had come out and names were coming back to Layla one by one, she looked up and found Min Jae standing in the doorway to the living room. He was watching her, without strategy, without guard. She walked over. They stood together in the doorway, not quite inside, not quite out. "I blamed you," she said. "On the terrace. I'm sorry." You were protecting yourself, he said. Don't apologize for that. I'm apologizing for not giving you the chance to explain, she said. You came to that wedding to protect my father's legacy, before you even knew who I was. Min-jae held her gaze. He didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. Whatever comes next, he said quietly. With the company, with the legal process, you don't have to move through it alone. Layla looked back into the kitchen at her mother's silver hair, at Carter's folder full of 3 years of searching, at the wall of photographs that had waited patiently for her to come home. I know, she said. Outside, the snow had stopped. The street was white and still and quiet. And in a house on Elmwood, a woman who had spent 3 years not knowing her own name sat in her mother's kitchen and began slowly and carefully to remember who she had always been. That's the end of Elena's story. But I want to ask you something before you go. When Layla walked into that wedding, no last name, no memory, no one expecting her, she didn't know she was walking back toward everything she had lost. She didn't know the man beside her had spent 3 years carrying a debt he couldn't repay to her father. She didn't know that the woman in white already knew exactly who she was and had been praying she'd never find out. She just walked in, head up, spine straight, because that's what you do when the world has taken everything from you and you still decide every single morning that you are a person worth taking up space. What part of this story hit you hardest? Was it the moment Diana Moore opened that door? The terrace confrontation? Or the quiet at the end, 2 people standing in a doorway with nothing left to hide? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved, you hit like. It takes 2 seconds, and it means more than you know. Share it with someone who needs to hear a story about a woman who came back from nothing. And subscribe so you're here for the next one, because the next story is already coming and I promise you don't want to miss it. Drop your city and local time in the comments right now. I want to see where in the world this story found you tonight. Until next time.